two, check. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Check. 1, 2, 2, 2, 2. Step 1, 2, 2. 2, 2, 2. Check 1, check 2, check 1, check 2. I'm here all day. All right, good job. Let's go. I'll talk to you around. Thank you. First, I want to welcome everybody here. We're going to start this right now. Welcome everybody to Indigenous Peoples Day here in Washington, D.C. in Malcolm X Park. My name is Peter Landeros, a Pastor Yaqui Indian from Arizona. I am also the leader of the American Indian movement in the Washington, D.C., Maryland, and Pennsylvania area. I want to recognize what land that we're on right now. This is the Piscataway land. And everybody needs to understand, no matter where you stand on this continent, it's called the United States, you are on native land. I'm going to open with a quick prayer. O Great Spirit, you make all races look upon us kindly as a human family. And please take away all the ignorance and hate which separate us from my people and brothers and sisters. I hope. We have on the phone today Chief Billy Tyack of the Piscataway people. And he's going to give a few words to the crowd over the phone. So everybody please listen. Thank you.
Hello? Yeah? Okay. I'm on the phone now? Yes. Okay, I'm gonna start now. Okay, I was prepared a statement. The statement is, on October 12, 1492, the world of the native people of America began to change. The Europeans brought with them diseases like smallpox and measles that would decimate our populations forever. Also policies that were foreign to our philosophies. From generational stewardship of the land to the new idea that only personal, not communal ownership of the land. The Columbus family and the Europeans almost erased native people from millions to 150 years in the Caribbean. This policy eventually spread to North, Central, and South America. Great native nations resisted, but the Europeans began to, the European technology and diseases were too much for their natives. Nations like the Incas, Aztecs, Mayans were overwhelmed. This onslaught continued into the colonial governments, to the governments in North, Central, and South America. Here in North America, it became the manifest destiny. The Europeans thought that it was God's will to destroy all native people, and that the land and resources was theirs. The Columbus legacy since 1492 was that he was a hero for 500 plus years. But recently, the young educated people have realized the truth about him. Instead of being the hero of old, the truth has emerged after 500 years. The statues that were erected in his honor are being torn down, not by the Indians alone, but by descendants of the European colonists and the black people that have discovered his and his family's role in the slave trade and total repression and treatment by the European plantation owners. If you educated people, the truth will finally emerge, and it has. The United Nations, states, cities have removed the name of Columbus Day from this day and rightly named it Indigenous Day. My friends, the 500-year-old roosters have finally came home to roost. So now, the hero Columbus is now the villain Columbus. I wish to thank all the young people that sought and found the truth and then acted to tell the truth to the world, that now Columbus is finally dead and buried as a villain. I wish to thank everybody for allowing me to present this message.
Thank you, Chief Billy Tyat, for your words today. I want to talk about Columbus a little bit.
And what it means. Columbus should never be honored. He is responsible for 8 million deaths in the Caribbean. His people, when they came here, the people he had on the boats, are responsible for raping and murdering so many women. It's not even funny. Okay, this is Columbus. This is what they celebrate, and it shouldn't be. Okay, they used to feed Taino babies to their dogs. That's not something you celebrate. And people need to understand this and recognize it, so that they know that this man's nothing to celebrate and his accomplishments. All right, this is the Uptown Boys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Uptown Boys. Next, we have the Malcolm X Park Drummers. And while they're getting ready to come up, a few more words on Christopher Columbus. They say he discovered America. I got news for you. He never stepped foot in America. His son did, but he never did. So why do we celebrate this day? Thank you for that beautiful music. Now everybody's kind of maybe questioning, why would we have something like this on Indigenous Peoples Day? These are indigenous people from a different continent, number one. Number two, the African American community and the Native American community have been fighting the same fights since they were brought to this country. Because what you have to understand is that we both were slaves at one point in time. And this is the reason why we invited these people here, because they've been involved with us since they came here, okay? And it's actually been proven that the Africans were here way before Columbus even thought about coming here, okay? So this is the reason why we are incorporating this in what we're doing here, okay? We, as communities, should be supporting each other, not fighting each other. Understand that and respect that. Now, we're waiting on another person to call in, Penny Williams from American Indian Support. When she calls in, are we ready? All right, here we go. Thank you.
Hi, this is Penny. Leave your name. Hi, this is Penny. Leave your name.
John? Pardon? Okay, thank you. Quay Quay. My name is Penny Gamble Williams. My people are the Chappaquiddick tribe of the Wampanoag Nation in Massachusetts. Can you hear me? I give thanks to Manitou, the Great Spirit, and the creator of all things, for this beautiful day to celebrate Indigenous people. The land where everyone is gathered is Piscataway land. The Piscataway are the caretakers and keepers of the rivers, the tributaries, and the Chesapeake Bay. Much respect to my longtime friend, Chief Billy Redwing Tyak of the Piscataway Indian Nation. On this day, I remember Chief Turkey Tyak. As an elder, I feel that it is important to look back and remember events that impacted your life. And it gets me thinking about the spirit and the heart of the warriors whom I have met and worked with over the years. At this time, I would like to share a little bit about my journey. My activism seed was firmly planted at Malcolm X Park in July of 1978. And after talking with some friends back home in Providence, where I was born, Providence, Rhode Island, they asked me if I knew about the longest walk. And I had read about it in Akwesasne Notes, a Six Nations publication. So I knew that the Narragansetts and Wampanoags would be attending. So I had a lot to think about, because my youngest of 5 children was about 15 months old and the oldest was 12. So I needed somebody to watch everybody because my husband had to work that day. So I got up really early after I found someone to watch my kids, grabbed my backpack, and I walked from Hyattsville, Maryland to take part in the longest walk. And what a powerful and historical day that was. As I stood by the 16th Street entrance, I witnessed the Lakota elders walking towards the opening of the park. And they were carrying the sacred pipe and the medicine bundles. They were focused. It was so spiritual and transforming that it's been etched in my life and my mind since that time. The power of the drum and the songs deeply touched everyone who witnessed this. So after listening to the speakers and walking to Lafayette Park to take action, I knew what I had to do. So I volunteered to work in the longest walk office. I met AIM leaders, activists, elders, chiefs, spiritual leaders from all over Turtle Island. And later I met some sisters from Women of All Red Nations who held a conference that I decided to attend. I joined Women of All Red Nations that day. I met the Tayak family, and I found that they were totally immersed in the movement. Tayak territory was a place where people could go, plan, and organize, but it was also a place to regroup, to sweat, and to have ceremony. In 1980, I got involved with the Long Walk for Survival with Leonard Peltier, and that was also at Malcolm X Park. We gathered, we heard speakers, and we walked to the White House. Later, we met at Howard University, and that's where I met Bob Brown, who powerfully laid out the history of Howard University and talked about why red and black must work together and form alliances. And my late brother in the struggle, Dr. Julia, he challenged everybody and made us realize the importance of why we can't let the colonial capitalists, pollutionists, politicians, and corporate entities get away with anything. My years of attending Black Liberation Day in Malcolm X Park with my children and seeing Kwame Ture and Wabanini and hearing the drummers was also empowering. So today we reflect and we take note. I've made a list of important years, a timeline, so to speak, that shifted all life on this continent. The cries of the ancestors still ring in our ears. The blood that was shed remains deep in the soil. 1492, 1607, 1619, 1620, 1621, 1637, 1675, 1676, 1776, 1843, 2020. We are our ancestors. There is blood memory flowing within all of us. It's in our DNA. We are connected to them through the air, the water, and our beautiful Mother Earth. And our beautiful Mother Earth has absorbed it all. So we pray, we do ceremony to release the pain of genocide, loss of land, culture, and ways of life. And each day we are given an opportunity to strengthen and transform our lives so we can continue to work and do the work that our ancestors weren't unable to complete. So we are all related in this life, and we have much to learn. There's a passage from a book, an author, a friend of mine named Sharif Abdullah, and the book that he wrote was Creating a World That Works for All. And so he states that there are three major stories that have shaped the behavior of people. We have the original story, also known as the keepers. Then the dominant story, the breakers. The emergent story, the menders. That's who we are as activists. We are menders, we are healers. We bring awareness to what's going on and why we have to pay attention. So remember, for every action, there is a reaction. And the laws of the universe are our guide. So we have to go back to the root. We have to understand what our purpose is as we do the work. And so for us as elders, we must teach the next generation, for it is their turn now to carry that torch and to defend the sacred. So now is the time to stand up for the rights of all and reside in love. It's all about love. So as warriors for justice for the people, we have to maintain spiritual clarity. We have to see the vision, and we have to take action in unity and love for the good of all life. We have to honor the earth and walk in balance. So I say to all, Iotosh, stand strong. That's Iotosh in the Wampanoag language. I say Katabatashamu. Thank you all. Blessings.
Thank you, Penny Williams. Before I bring Councilman David Grosso on, I want to mention something that's a big problem here in the indigenous community, and that is our murdered and missing women. In 2016, close to 15,000 women went missing and were found, and law enforcement does absolutely nothing for us because we are a sovereign nation inside the country. They say the laws don't apply to the people coming onto the reservation, raping our women and killing our women because it's a sovereign nation. That's not what it's supposed to be. Okay, my sisters, my daughter, all right, out of everyone here, half of you are coming up missing every year. And that's just wrong, okay? We need to have local law enforcement and federal government work with us when it comes to this. Our women to us are sacred. Our women to us are to be honored. And to let the indigenous men know, and men period know, you never raise your hand to your woman. You never raise your voice to your woman. Without her, you cannot repopulate this nation. She is the reason why your sons and daughters are standing here. Respect our women, I hope. David Grosso.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. I am Councilmember David Grosso. I'm an at-large council member here in the District of Columbia, and I'm thrilled to be out here today to support Indigenous Peoples Day in the District of Columbia. I mean, finally, after all these years. Yeah, I was elected in 2012 and began serving my term in 2013, and the very first month that I was in office, my colleagues supported me in a resolution to say that the name of the Washington football team should be changed forever, and we finally got that done this year as well. My colleagues also joined me, a majority of them, that said that we should no longer support Columbus Day because of the reality of who Christopher Columbus was and the harm that he did to the peoples of this country. Across history, people have said to me over and over again, Christopher Columbus was a rapist, a colonizer, somebody that put people in chains and did not respect human life across the board. And why we continue to support him baffled me when I was a child, baffled me when I was a young adult, and most importantly, baffled me when I was a council member. And so the fact of the matter is I put it to my task, me and my office, to change this day once and for all, and we finally did it last year. It was not easy to do, and I can tell you that there is a lot of opposition to this still because people still revere Columbus as somebody who did good things. The fact is, all you have to do is read the history books that they give you in school to know that he wasn't that type of person. The other fact is that it's important for us to honor the American Indians in this country. They were here first. They set the standards, and the days that we start to listen to their relationship with Mother Earth, to their relationship with other human beings, to their way of life, the better off we'll be as a country and as a people here in this United States of America. You probably know that I'm not running for re-election this year. There's 23 people running for my seat, and I hope that the movement that started with changing Columbus Day to Indigenous Peoples Day, the movement that we started to change the football team's name, I hope that you'll take that movement and challenge each and every one of my colleagues and each of the one of the people running for my seat to continue to try to stand up for respect for the first peoples of this country, to give them the deserved respect that they deserve across the board. I'm talking about respect for the land that is their land and was their land to begin with. I'm talking about respect for the rights of the people that were here first, and I'm talking about honoring some of the treaties across this country that were forced upon them to begin with, but now are not even honored in the end. So ask them. It's local, I know. You might say, well, that's a federal government problem. But the reality is you could step up every single day and ask your local politicians what they're doing to support American Indian rights in their jurisdiction and force it on the rest of this country. So I'm celebrating Indigenous Peoples Day. I hope everyone else is too. And I know even though I won't be in office next year, I'm going to continue to support and continue to demand that we respect American Indians' rights across this entire country and world. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Touch upon one of the things he mentioned, which is the Washington football team. That fight's been going on here for centuries. The Tyak family have been bringing that fight to them since the team came here. Okay? That word is a describing word for a blood-soaked body. How is that showing us honor in any way, shape, or form? Now we have David Swanson.
Go, it's David. Okay. Hi, this is David Swanson. I'm the Executive Director of World Beyond War, and I am down here in Charlottesville, Virginia, and wish I could be with you in Washington, D.C. I'll talk for a few minutes about what I think war and peace and Indigenous Peoples Day have to do with each other, and feel free to tell me if I've gone too long. I think there might be no more important place to mark Indigenous Peoples Day than Washington, D.C., the center of global weapons dealing, base building, and war making, the leading hub of nuclear weapons production and environmental destruction, the seat of a national and imperial government that oversees colonies of second-class citizens on Caribbean and Pacific Islands, as well as in Washington, D.C. itself, while keeping nearly 1,000 major military bases in over 80 other countries, a government that continues to abuse the remaining native people of North America, exploit the land to destroy the sky and poison the water, in a city that after decades of protests is willing to rename its professional concussion-inducing team as long as it can name it for war makers. And why is there a C in Washington, D.C. anyway? Because Washington claims the mantle of colonialism, empire, slavery, and genocide, and because it claims ownership not only of the United States, but of the two continents of America, calling its people Americans, and their single biggest public project, the Defense Department. The many U.S. suburban paradises that are sprinkled across the globe as military bases are gated communities on steroids and on apartheid. Their residents are often immune from criminal prosecution for their actions outside the gates, while the locals are only admitted within to do the yard work and the cleaning. Foreign U.S. bases were not invented in 1898 the way textbooks tell our children. The United States had foreign bases prior to and built more during its War of Independence from foreign occupying troops who raped and pillaged. The motto of the new nation was, hey, that's our job. Down here at the University of Virginia, a giant statue celebrating George Rogers Clark doesn't just honor genocide, but depicts it approvingly in a sculpted monument. Every base built west of the mountains to advance the settler colonists was a foreign base. Every war was a foreign war. If you think that's ancient history, explain to me why every newspaper in the United States calls the current war on Afghanistan the longest U.S. war. They could not do that if they believed that Native Americans were human beings. Tell me why every newspaper in the United States will tell you that the deadliest U.S. war ever was the U.S. Civil War. They could not do that if they believed that Native Americans or Filipinos or Koreans or Vietnamese or Laotians or Iraqis or Afghans or the rest of humanity was human. They don't even include the deaths of the Native Americans against whom the United States was fighting wars during the U.S. Civil War. Most teachers in the U.S. will tell you that the conquest of territory is a thing of the past, but U.S. military bases are on land all over the globe that it took by displacing people in Greenland, Canada, Alaska, Hawaii, Panama, Puerto Rico, Trinidad, Korea, Okinawa, Guam, Diego Garcia, the Philippines, and numerous Pacific islands. We have a war problem. We have a bigotry problem. We have a problem of a political system that is putting up candidates from two different parties, neither of which mentions the problem or addresses the problem in any way. We need to turn this holiday into a real celebration and force of education around Indigenous people and the wisdom of sustainable living on this planet. And we also need to transform the upcoming holiday called Veterans Day back into what it was, Armistice Day, a celebration of ending war and transforming this world into a place beyond war. I appreciate you including me.
Thank you, sir. Next we have up Lucy Murphy of People's Music Network.
Good afternoon. I'm Lucy Murphy with the People's Music Network, but I'm also with the One DC Black Workers Center Chorus, and we are wearing our t-shirts today. I'm also going to be joined by Foti Fusion because we are going to do a song from the repertoire of Ulali, written by Purafe. And People's Music Network did a program this past Monday online, which you can see by going to our Facebook page, People's Music Network on Facebook. And Feiruz Foti had her young people from Quarter Tones Music Academy do a very special song by Redbone on Monday. So you want to go to the internet and check that out. I'm going to ask Angie Whitehurst to come up to the stage and read the words for all my relations.
Okay. All right. All My Relations by Piotr Faye. To our elders who teach us our creation and our past so we may preserve Mother Earth for our ancestors yet to come. We are the land. This is dedicated to our relatives before us. Thousands of years ago, to the 150 millions who were exterminated across the Western Hemisphere in the first 400 years, starting in 1492. To those who have kept their homelands, and to the nation extinct due to mass slaughter, slavery, deportations, and disease unknown to them. And to the ones who are subjected to the same treatment today. To the ones who survived the relocations and the ones who died along the way. To those that carried on traditions and lived strong among their people. To those that left their communities by force, by choice, and through generations no longer know who they are. To those who search and never find. To those that turn away, the so-called non-accepted. To those that bring us together, and those living outside, keeping touch, the voice of many. To those that make it back to live and fight the struggle of their people. To those that give up and to those that do not care. To those who abuse themselves and others, and those who revive again. To those who are physically, mentally, or spiritually incapable by accident or by birth. To those who seek strength in our spirituality and the ways of life, and those who exploit it, even our own. To those who fall for the lies, join the dividing lines that keep us fighting amongst each other. To the outsiders who step in, good or bad, and those of us who don't know better. To the leaders and prisoners of war, politics, crime, race, and religion, innocent or guilty. To the young, the old, the living, and the dead. To our brothers and sisters and all living things across Mother Earth and her beauty we've destroyed and deny the honor that the Creator has given each individual, the truth that lies in our hearts. All my relations.
Our narrator, and I'm Lucy Murphy, all my relations.
Who do I give this to? I give this back to Peter. He's behind you.
Thank you, ladies. Okay, we have up next, excuse me for butchering your name, a call-in, the next one. Are they on the phone? Okay. While we're getting them ready on the phone, let's do a quick reminder of why we're not celebrating Columbus Day. Columbus established a slave trade from America to Europe so that the indigenous people were taken to Europe. And the most popular taken were young girls between 8 and 10 for the specific use of sex slaves. That is not honoring our people. Here we go. Next caller.
Thank you very much. It is my honor to be able to join this day today, to bring attention to the ongoing struggles of indigenous people for their fundamental human rights and to free themselves from the ravages of the ongoing colonial project. it is important that we remind ourselves, as many of the speakers have already done, that this invasion that occurred beginning in 1492 was one of the most horrific crimes against humanity ever recorded in the annals of human history. And what makes this invasion so horrific is that the consequences of this invasion, the conditions that have been created, the attempts at genocide are ongoing through physical assaults, attempts at cultural erasure, and the violence of not remembering being imposed on everyone. It is the arrogant white supremacist psychopathology that recognize itself as superior, that did not recognize the existence and value of non-white life, that drove and informed the notions of first the doctrine of discovery, and then the racist concept of manifest destiny that provided the rationale for the military assaults and conquests across the territory from the East Coast to the West that we now refer to as the United States of America. It's important that we acknowledge also that this assault, which went across the territories that people refer to in a popular way as the so-called Americas, is an assault that continues from Nicaragua to Colombia to parts of Venezuela to the consequences of the wars in El Salvador and in Guatemala. This attempt to try to continue to contain and control the aspirations of the indigenous people of these lands continues tomorrow as an attempt to try to impose their will on the people of Bolivia. So we say today from the Black Alliance for Peace that we understand that without justice there will be no peace, that this colonial capitalist project has to be defeated, not only for the liberation and sovereignty of the indigenous, but for the entire planet. So we stand in fundamental solidarity today and pledge our resistance, pledge our blood in this fight to bring this white supremacist, pan-European, colonial, capitalist patriarchy to a final conclusion. We make that declaration, my friends, not only for ourselves, but also for collective humanity. So today, let us recommit ourselves to this fight. Let us remind ourselves that while we are not able to determine the conditions that we are born into as human beings, we can determine how we respond to those conditions. And we say we must fight. We stand in solidarity with our indigenous brothers and sisters and declare that we will fight and we will struggle and we will win. We will build a new world today for ourselves and for those generations coming after us. So thank you so much for organizing this day, to the organizers of this event. And we will stand in solidarity. We will struggle, and we will win. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Now we have Kamal Benjamin of the African Peoples Revolutionary Party.
We say revolutionary greetings from the All African Peoples Revolutionary Party. And we'd like to pay tribute to the indigenous people on Indigenous Peoples Day. We say revolutionary greetings to Brother Billy Tyak and the Piscataway Indians, and Penny Gamble Williams of the Women of the Red Nations, and Pete Landeros and the Mid-Atlantic American Indian Movement, and David Gross of the D.C. City Council, and Bob Brown for organizing this event. And we thank you all. We thank you all for coming out today. We'd like to honor and pay, as I said, we like to honor and pay tribute to the indigenous people and their 500 years of struggle for liberation, freedom, and self-determination against the onslaught of genocide, disease, and the treacherous attempt by the European settlers to eliminate, colonize, and confiscate your lands in the New World. African people have also experienced similar struggles on the continent of Africa and in the north and south of the New World or the Western Hemisphere. We know that every contractual agreement that was agreed upon and signed by the U.S. government, the settlers and the indigenous peoples were broken by the U.S. government during those years. We also know that when Christopher Columbus and his sailors invaded the New World in 1492, he was greeted and helped to survive the wilderness by the indigenous people. Some of the Taino people, as we know them at that time, were located in Cuba. After this hospitable greetings, the Taino people, the indigenous people of that land, had to fight and the settlers, fight Christopher Columbus and the settlers to keep from being raped, robbed of their labor, gold, silver, spices, and to keep from being enslaved. We have documentations that 2 years after Columbus set foot on the beaches of the New World, a papal bull, we're talking about Italy, the Pope of Italy, split the world in time, in that time between the two European superpowers, Portugal and Spain, and in a deal that still resonates today. The terms of the agreement were detailed in the Treaty of Torcelitas, a little town in Spain. This opened the doors for the conquistadors to conquer, slaughter, and rob many of the indigenous people in the central and south of the Western Hemisphere, and tow down the Incas, Mayas, and Aztec monuments of gold and silver, and destroyed the city and burnt the cities to ruins. We again pay tribute to the brave and indigenous men and women of the northern part of the New World, such as Crazy Horse, Sitting Bull, Geronimo, and many others, just to name a few, who fought valiantly against the U.S. armies and settlers. We know about the Trail of Tears. We know about Wounded Knee. We know about the Battle of the Little Bighorn. We know that during this time, the indigenous people were moved from their original homelands to travel hundreds of miles away to reservations. And finally, we thank you for your assistance in helping to protect African runaway slaves before and after the Civil War. We thank the American Indian Movement for the many times that you have marched with us during African Liberation Day with Kwame Ture, Bob Brown, and the many hundreds of us that were organizing African Liberation Day right here in this park. We again thank you for organizing Indigenous Peoples Day. We say, no justice, no peace. Forever, forward ever, backwards never.
Thank you, sir. Next, we have Sheila Hansen of the United Tribes of the Shenandoah. Check one, check two.
Good afternoon, my relatives. It's an honor and a privilege to be here today. And it's really an honor to see each and every one of you that braved the pandemic, that braved this horrible politics going on in D.C., but turned out in support of Indigenous people. And we really appreciate that. I am Shawnee descent. And the Shawnee, we had a wonderful chief in 1700s, and he was killed in 1812. His name was Tecumseh. And Tecumseh had a vision to unite all Indian tribes together. He knew that together the people would be more powerful than is separated and in separate tribes. And so he called for a united tribes to come together, to honor the traditions of one another, to honor the religious practices of one another, to respect and hold each other as brothers and sisters. Today, that's where we are. Our country is a united tribe. We're not the United States of America, we're the United Tribes of America. And it encompasses people of all colors, all backgrounds, and all religion. This is why last year I created the United Tribes of the Shenandoah. We, as Indigenous people, we are out here and we have many tribes represented, yet we can come in ceremony and be together and respect one another. And that's what we're lacking in this country. We're lacking the respect. We're lacking the honor. We're lacking the kind words to one another. So today we gather as United Tribes of the United States. And we also gather to ask this federal government and all state governments to please stop using Columbus Day. It's very derogatory to us because we know the atrocities that he committed, and most important of all, he didn't discover America. How can you discover something that's already here? How can you discover people that are already here? And then how can you commit so many atrocities against the people who called this home for thousands and thousands and thousands of years? I'm asking that every textbook across this country, Atlantic to Pacific, take Columbus out of it. I don't care what you want to call this Italian Day. I had someone said, I find this offensive because I'm Italian. I said, we're not against Italian people. We're not against any ethnicity. We're against using the false and the myths that have been perpetrated upon us about Christopher Columbus. Christopher Columbus was actually put in prison by his own country for the atrocities. Anyways, thank you for being here. It takes a a lot of courage to be here today. And thank you so much to the organizers and the supporters of this event. And let this be one of many year after year. We'll get better. We're going to get better. We're still here, and we're still strong. And thank you, my relatives.
Thank you. Thank you, Sheila Hansen. We now have Ali Murray Hall, President of the American Indian Society.
I'll speak this way. Good afternoon. Oh, I have a loud voice too. Good afternoon. I greet you. First, I want to say, Wanishi to Kishinamawe, Kishimayunk, who's the creator. I look out on you today, and I see a myriad of beauty and strength. My name is Elise. I am Lenape, and I'm related to Sheila, my Shawnee sister. I'm a storyteller. A storyteller is not something that you call yourself, but what the elders call you. And with that, I would like to share with you a story, if that's all right. I stood on the mountain. I stood on the mountain many, many years ago, before they came. And I spoke with Creator, and he breathed out his spirit. And when he breathed out his spirit, 100 billion things caught his spirit, and they are a part of him. I caught his spirit, and I am a part of him. We caught his spirit. We are of one people. When I spoke to the Creator, he said, daughter, I have something for you to do. You must come down from the sanctity of your mountain. And he touched my ears, and he said I would learn to hear. Then he touched my lips, and he said, when you speak truth. You speak with strength. You speak with my power. Then he touched my eyes. He opened my eyes, and he said, see what's going on. And so I ask you today to repeat this word. It is called Tokahila. Tokahila is to wake up. There is a disease that spreads across this country that we call Turtle Island. This is our home. This is our mother. When we walk on, Mother holds us. I have walked for many years now, and I have seen people turn against one another over a crust of bread, over power. And it saddens me. The disease that spreads, it's contagious. You must shield yourself. In order to shield yourself, I say, Tokahila, wake up. Wake up. Use your eyes to see what's going on. When you speak, speak to build up. I ask you not to pull down, but to build up. The things that are going on right now, my people are not strangers to. My aunt was a young girl when they took her womb and said she would not have children. Indian schools are real. That school closed in 1964. Robbery, rape, murder, you name it, it's nothing new. But what I also see is the beauty of you. I see your strength, I see your power, I see your perseverance. So I ask you today to come together, unify, because once something is unified, the knot cannot be opened. I thank you for listening to me, Wenashi, and thank you so much. And remember, Tokahila.
Thank you very much. Now we have Forty family performing some music for us today. Okay, here we go.
Can you come help? Do you mind bringing
while they're getting themselves set up, real quick, the gentleman over here brought up the word reservation. That's not what they originally were called. In the documents called treaties, they are called concentration camps. Understand that. Okay? We as indigenous people have been looked upon as the enemy of the United States government since the starting of this country. And even till 2020, we are still looked upon as enemies of the United States government. The other thing when it comes to Columbus, okay, that man and his crew kept journals on what they did to the people when they got here, and how they claim when they saw the indigenous people how easily they would be to murder and control. That is not honorable. I do not honor that man in any way, and I don't even like speaking his name. And the only reason why I'm speaking it today is to prove a point. All right, and we're ready.
Hello, we are members of Foti Fusion. We are a Palestinian Egyptian American musical group, fusion group. Today we are very honored to celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day, the indigenous people of the Americas, by singing traditional Arabic music. We will be singing 3 songs, الأرض بتتكلم عربي, يا طيور, and سحر الليالي. The first song means the land speaks Arabic and is a song by Sayyid Makawi, honoring the land that has been systematically stolen from Palestinians as a result of Israeli colonialism and occupation. We chose this song as our first song to show the commonalities and struggles across the world. Just like the indigenous people of the Americas, indigenous people all over the world have suffered similar injustices by having their land stolen from them. This song is to honor all those people and show that we are part of one global struggle. The last 2 songs pay homage to the indigenous people around the world that continue to resist and fight for justice. These songs are about the birds of peace and sleepless nights. Happy Indigenous Peoples Day. I hope you enjoy our performance. Thank you. And thank you to Lucy Murphy for being the mic stand.
Yeah, she's holding the mic for me. Great. Can you hear us? الأرض بتتكلم عربي، الأرض بتتكلم عربي، الأرض Thank you. I can.
Our next song is Yetuyur, and this song is by the Egyptian singer Esmahan, and is a little bit of a fusion of Arabic music and opera. Hope you enjoy it.
Lucy. Somebody volunteer to hold the mic for me? Anybody? Okay.
And I'll just introduce the three members of our group. So my father, Fuad Foti, who is playing the oud and singing. My younger sister, Yasmin Foti, who is playing the tabla and will be singing. And I'm Feroz Foti, and I am playing the cello and sing.
شو كان حلو الليالي والهوا يبقى ناطرنا تيجي تلاقيني وياخدنا بعيد غدير المي والليالي. شو كانت حلوة الليالي والهوا يبقى ناطرنا تيجي تلاقيني وياخدنا بعيد غدير المي والليالي. لا 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 تعون على نبع المي قدام ساعات مزروعة في جدي كان يطحن الحي معه زهريات يبقوا الناس في الساعات شي معهن اكياس في عربيات رايحين جايين على طول السرقات تهدر غنية يا سهر الليالي يا حلو على بالي غني 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 على الطرقات يا سهر الليالي يا حلو على بالي غني 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 على الطرقات. لا 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 لا
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for your music. And again, people may be asking, why do we have him here on Indigenous Peoples Day? What's happening to their country happened here. Okay, first. What's going on in Israel is wrong. And if people don't like what I just said, oh well. Now, we have, I'm sorry, I'm going to butcher your name really bad. Defy Donna of the Nation Council of Arabic Americans.
Hello? Just give me a second.
Okay, he needs a second. To also discuss.
Can you hear me?
Oh, here we go.
Okay, I'm ready. Okay. Good afternoon, brothers and sisters. I'm really, really honored to speak to you on this special day. And I'm equally honored to speak as an indigenous Palestinian, an indigenous Arab. I'm saying this because, like all the indigenous peoples of Americas, Australia, and Africa, we Arabs know quite well the significance of this day, the significance of being in the streets, the significance of being visible. Today, we indigenous peoples of the world are more visible than ever. We are visible in the streets of DC, the streets of Palestine, and our visibility is power. Our very existence strongly defies the settlers' discourse of negation, the white settlers' discourse of exclusion, but we are here. We are visible, and our visibility is power. Today, it's an opportunity to realize how deeply we are connected as indigenous and oppressed people all over the world. From the moment the Europeans embarked on colonizing the rest of the world, our fate, the fate of the indigenous peoples, became interconnected. So the European colonization not only oppressed us, but also connected us and made our fate one. So you can be sure that as Native Americans, we Arabs, and particularly we Palestinians, realize the existential challenges you face every day. We realize the problems you have, but you can also be sure that we know your feelings, we know your resistance, and also we realize and know and feel your hopes, because we have the same feelings, the same hopes, and the same challenges. We also believe that the Palestinian people's resistance to Israeli colonialism is a proof of our understanding of your problems and your challenges in this continent, in North America, South America, and also in Australia and Africa, and everywhere there is an indigenous people and there is an oppressed people. Of course, the inverse is also true. We know that all your achievements, all your struggle are also real and great contributions to the struggle of the peoples of Palestine and the struggle of the Arab people and to the struggle of natives everywhere. From the moment the Europeans embarked on colonizing the rest of the world, the fate of us, our fate, the fate of all the indigenous and oppressed people, as I said, became interconnected. From that moment, the indigenous people in North America, in South America, in the Arab homeland, in Africa, did not lose their freedom only. And they did not lose even their life. Equally important, and this is really the significance of this day, we lost our voice and we lost our ability to tell the story, our story, and the story and the suffering of our people and oppression of our ancestors. So to us, to me, and to Palestinians and Arabs everywhere, the Indigenous Peoples Day is about truth. Today is about the Indigenous Peoples' truth, not the white settlers' false truth. To us, it's about having a voice, the voice of the oppressed that tells our story, despite and in spite the loud voice and the loud and powerful voice of the oppressor. That's why our visibility today, as I said, is important. Our visibility in the streets, in the parks, in the media is power. For we know that the truth is thoroughly imbued with relations of power. And to be visible is to be powerful and to receive recognition of our story. We meet today, not only in DC, but everywhere in the world there are oppressed people and indigenous people to proclaim our indigenous truth and to defy and reject the settlers' false truth initiated by the Columbus Day and by the Columbus colonial venture. We meet to declare that it is time for the world to unlearn the false settlers' truth, the Columbus false truth that denies the very humanity of billions of indigenous people all over the world. And it is time for the world to learn the indigenous truth. and to know about the suffering and the oppression of the indigenous people everywhere. In Palestine and all over the Arab homeland, we came to know this fact very well. Every day for us is an Indigenous Peoples Day. Every day for us is a day of struggle, because to our oppressors, every day is also a Columbus Day. In Palestine, we call our Indigenous Peoples Day the Nakba Day. We commemorate that day on May 15 of every year, because on that day, in 1948, European settlers colonized and stole our homeland. They uprooted our people and forcefully expelled hundreds of thousands of them into exile. Now they number about 8 million people in exile, and established a settler colonial state on a soil that is full with the corpses and bones of our ancestors. Our homeland was stolen, and we were denied even the right to live. We were denied the right to exist. And on top of all that, we were demonized as the aggressors. But on that day, our fate became intertwined with the fate of every native and every oppressed people on this planet. Our fate became interconnected with all the victims of colonialism and imperialism. And like the indigenous people of North America and South America, Australia and Africa, and like the oppressed people all over the world, we know that reclaiming our right to live, denied by settler colonialism and Western imperialism, reclaiming our right to our land, stolen and conquered by marauding settlers, begins here, begins with reclaiming the truth and reclaiming the voice and telling our story. And similar to the false settler truth of Columbus Day, colonial Zionism's discourse silenced by power, silenced every non-Zionist history in Palestine, and claimed the history of Palestine as the history of Zionism in Palestine only. And while the soil of our homeland is full with corpses and bones of our ancestors, we are not only denied the freedom to be, we are denied the right to live there. We are even denied the right to tell our story, the story of the suffering and oppression of our people, from ethnic cleansing and expulsion to massacres and land theft. Today is a chance to tell our story and remind the world that we are here, and Palestinians everywhere, Arabs everywhere, are telling this story on this particular day. But as I said, to us, like every oppressed people, every day is an Indigenous Day. But the Indigenous Peoples Day of 2020 is really particularly significant. We meet here in Washington, D.C., in Malcolm X's park of all places, like we meet everywhere all over the globe. But we meet in D.C. in Malcolm X's park as our Black brothers and sisters in the African American community and in the Black Lives Matter movement fight their struggle for justice and teach the world, and teach us really too, yet again, that the struggle of indigenous and oppressed peoples all over the world is the driving force of progress for all humanity. It teaches the world that the struggle of the oppressed and indigenous peoples is undoubtedly the essential characteristic of contemporary history. Brothers and sisters and comrades, to give it more political meaning, our struggle as an indigenous and oppressed people everywhere is one. But our task isn't only to liberate our peoples and end their oppression and suffering. The task the indigenous peoples carry on their shoulders is also to liberate the oppressors themselves as well and reclaim their humanity, a humanity they lost as they embarked on colonizing the rest of the world and oppressing their fellow man. It is enormously a difficult undertaking, but the future of humanity depends on it. The future of humanity depends on us, the indigenous and the oppressed people of the world. The future of the world, the freedom of the world, depends on our struggle. But I'm very optimistic. After 500 years, despite all the oppression, despite all the suffering, after 500 years of European colonialism and Western imperialism, the indigenous and oppressed peoples are still here fighting. And the Indigenous Peoples Day today is a proof of that. 500 years of oppression, and the indigenous people are more visible than ever. That's why I'm optimistic. 500 years, and even more probably, but particularly from the revolution in San Domingo in Haiti in 1790 to Jerusalem today and DC today, the struggle continues. We never lost hope. We will never lose hope. We should not lose hope, because not only our fate depends on it, not the fate of our children and grandchildren in the future, but the fate of humanity. Thank you very much. And again, greetings from all the Palestinians and Arab people to the indigenous people everywhere, but particularly the indigenous people of Native America, of North America. Thank you very much, and carry on. Thank you.
Thank you for speaking, sir. We now have another call in, David Asan. No, I'm butchering your last name. Osuna. We'll wait for him to call in, but while we're waiting on that, in the indigenous community, one of the biggest fights that we have is land and water rights, on how we no longer have rights to fish in our own rivers because of the federal government said, oh no, we changed our mind. The federal government has honored none of the treaties that they have come to us with as indigenous people. And they're still breaking those treaties today. Okay, just a couple months ago, up in upstate New York, you had, sovereign rights taken away from a whole nation of people because the federal government wants the land. So there's always a fight in the community. We, water rights, the whole thing with, poisoning our water and taking our land rights away from us, it's just wrong. They don't never honor anything they've said to us. We have other issues in our community where we have the highest suicide rate of our young people because they don't have anything to look forward to. Now, we got rid of one of the issues of the Washington football team's name on how it demeaned us as people, okay? But you also have okay. So we're having an issue with call-ins. Sorry about that. So we're going on to Lou Wolf. And they're calling him now. So we, the other thing that needs to be talked about and discussed is alcoholism and drug abuse in our community. It runs rampant in our community, okay? We as indigenous people, when we got fed that alcohol, it just messed us up inside. Okay, we're good? All right. Okay, we now have Lou Wolf on the phone.
Yes. Okay. Yes, good afternoon, and thank you very much for doing this event on Indigenous Peoples Day. Unfortunately, it couldn't happen on the day because of the weather, We're doing it today. I'm happy to be on this call representing the magazine that I co-founded in 1978, Covert Action Quarterly, then renamed Covert Action Information Bulletin, and today it is 40 years later, called Covert Action Magazine. You can find it on our website, covertactionmagazine.com. We report on the crimes of the CIA and the intelligence apparatus of the United States. There are at least 17 federal agencies engaging in intelligence activities. And the human costs of these operations are well documented through their entire existence. Of course, the CIA is the head of the pack, as well as the FBI here domestically. But, you know, they ride under the banner of American exceptionalism. Every president in our lifetime has said the magic words, and we've heard it again and again and again. The United States is the greatest nation on the face of the earth. End quote. Well, that leaves out 193 other countries across the globe. And when you look at the history of U.S. imperialism and U.S. intervention, time after time after time, you see the role of U.S. intelligence in engaging in overthrows of governments, of rigging elections, of engaging in torture and widespread repression. But you know, the cardinal principle in most, if not all, of these interventions is the resources of those countries, the natural resources, which are their resources. They are not America's resources. But that's what justifies, in their minds, the use of these tactics and these vicious programs. I call to your attention the fact that, you know, down through history, the United States has seen fit to engage in these operations in order to justify its existence, the existence of the intelligence community, or as they call it, a community. I call it an apparatus. And let's be clear. The indigenous people of this world do not deserve to be called less than human, or to be treated as less than human. But that's what we've done down through history. Obviously, the native people of our country were treated like animals, and in many ways still are, because the native people, Native Americans, are on reservations where they have, in many, many cases, if not most all of them, do not have running water, do not have electricity. There is widespread, lack of resources. The fact that there's widespread alcoholism and suicides, that's no accident. That's the way it's done by the United States against our indigenous people. And in order to justify these tactics, the United States has to engage in what I call wholesale repression, wholesale attacks on the indigenous people of the world. We have on our website today a brand new article about Bolivia, the election which is coming up this Sunday, tomorrow, in Bolivia. And it's a rigged election, but you have to read this article to understand what the United States is doing to Bolivia. Bolivia has the largest largest amount of lithium in the world. Lithium is a very key element, but it's one of the many natural resources that the United States seizes in order to carry out its widespread program of repression and taking over the world. Likewise, you will see this on our website. A lot of other operations throughout the world right now under Donald Trump, and directed, of course, by somebody he had differences with. His name was Steve Bannon. But Steve Bannon has gone across the world, both in Eastern Europe, as well as Latin America, even into Africa. But did you know that the United States now has bases in 58 African countries under what is called AFRICOM, or the Africa Command of the Pentagon? So once again, it's natural resources that dictate our policies. I urge you all to know that if we don't end this regime of Donald Trump in this election, you must vote. You must vote, and we have to get him out. I am not a great supporter of Joe Biden. However, I understand, and we all must understand, that we must defeat Trump overwhelmingly. He cannot be allowed to say that it was a rigged election. It's a rigged election which he wants to run his way, but he's not going to be allowed to. So I urge all of you to vote on November 3rd and to tell everyone you know to vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your words. While we're waiting to try to get Daniel back on the phone, the gentleman brought up a valid point. We have to get out and vote. I'm going to say it again. We have to get out and vote. If we don't, I don't see us. I think things get a lot worse if we keep I don't even want to call him a person, in office that's there. Okay? The actions that's been going on with the federal government lately are horrible. And they cannot continue. Get out and vote.
My name is Leonard, and I am a champion of youth, and I am a former and
We're going to move on, and we're going to do the murdered and missing women now. I have representatives here, women of the Native American community. Mary Phillips is going to speak, along with others here, about the murdered and missing women.
Hokage Nawimnaha, Ijaje Levoiza. Thank you all for being here. This is such a beautiful day for such a good reason. We missed out on Monday. The beautiful rain came, gave us some growing power, and now we're out here in the sun enjoying this day. And I just want to thank the organizers for bringing us together, for bringing this issue again to DC. We need to have it every single year in the same way, in a big way, because we are here. We are still here. All of us Native women, all of us Native men and families. So Hokage, Wibnaha. I just want to mention a few things today about this topic that I don't think gets enough information shared. And people across the country are not aware of the current situation, and that is the missing, murdered, and Indigenous women of the United States and Canada. And it's such an important topic. If you think about your mother, your grandmother, your sister, your aunties, we are being stolen. We are being taken from our families. If for any other reason to say that you got a good Indian woman killed. So I just want to share a little bit, which is that as an Indigenous woman or Native American woman, and I grew up outside the res, but a lot of women on my reservation back home in Macy, Nebraska, our women have been hurt. Our women are impacted by this every day. Every time we hear about a woman being beaten, being violently assaulted. It's a terrible day to talk about this, but we need to talk about this. And I think if we can share this message, share this information, we can end the violence. We can get our stolen sisters back. Everybody will know who to call, where to call. So just a couple of facts on that is that 1 in 3 Native American women are violently assaulted, raped, or murdered. 1 in 3. So if you look around, our Native women who are out there today, raise your hands. Native women, there we are. So sadly, one of us out of the 3, we will be murdered, raped, or violently assaulted. So with that statistic alone, you would think that would create such an impassioned change for policy. That didn't happen until this year, that there was a National Strategic Task Force created to help find Native women and protect Native women. So if you also think about that 97% of Native women, the assaults that are being put on them are done by non-Indigenous men. So non-Native men are doing this to our women on our reservations without consequence. They can't do anything to these people who are doing this harm to our Native women. So we have to find a way to protect and take care of our women, our young ladies who are out there fighting for their lives. And the one last thing I want to pass on is that I'm wearing a red dress today, and many Native women wear our beautiful red skirts to honor our missing, murdered Indigenous women and to keep them on our minds, because they are not lost from our minds and hearts. They are still with us, and we will not stop until they are found. Everybody, please say with me, we will not stop until they are found. Thank you. Until they are found. Thank you, thank you.
My name is Sheila Hansen, and I live not too far from here in Virginia. I have a first-hand experience with missing and murdered Indigenous women. A few years ago, my brother, my friend, Dennis Banks, was staying at our house in Virginia with his daughter, Darla, and Darla's son. One morning, Darla came down. It was she and I that would get up early. We would burn sage, say our prayers, make the coffee, and get ready for the day. And she said, I haven't heard from Rose. She said, it's not like her. I haven't heard from her. It's been 3 days, and I can't get her. So immediately, I got a legal pad, and we started writing down the people she contacted and who had said they had seen her and what was going on. Well, the police wouldn't touch the case because they said you had to be missing for longer than 3 days. I don't know. This is Minnesota, so I'm not sure what that was about. Well, we put Darla and her son back on the plane. We realized there was a really, really big problem. It took about a month and a half, and 2 months later, Rose's body was found in the woods outside of, in Minnesota, Leech Lake. She had been strangled. Her body had been set on fire. So, sadly, we gathered ourselves up took off for Minnesota and for her ceremony. It's the toughest thing I had to ever sit through for 4 days. We sat there and remembered Rose. And then it came to me that one of the things, all the people who had spoken, Anishinaabe, Ojibwe people, that they had mentioned one important thing, and that was forgiveness. Well, how could we ever forgive the man that did that? We couldn't. But we could forgive within ourselves so that we could have peace and go on. It's a very big problem. Very big problem across this country. So when somebody says to you, I haven't heard from my sister, my daughter, my mother, take it seriously. Don't wait for things to happen from the forces to be, but take it in your own hands and start searching. How is this going to stop? It'll stop when human beings become true human beings and respect women and one another. Hope.
The man that she spoke about was taller than you, and he was a man of tenacity. He would laugh and say, "Oh no, Allie, I take no medication." And that night that we all stood together, I saw this man reach down to lean on me at 5'2", broken. And it destroyed him. And soon he walked on the wind. He was gone from us. But what I would like you to do is just imagine those of you who have nieces that you love, daughters that you love, sisters, mothers. If you close your eyes and imagine that you do not know where they are just gone, and you want to search for them, it's a nightmare. So with that, I would like to take this for you so you will take this tune into your spirit and imagine so that you understand the pain and hurt. And if one person grieves, grieve with them and then strengthen them and just come with us as we go and find our sisters. We are born and we come into this world, we are called light. And the mothers sing you into their arms, and the mother is actually the grandmother, not the birth mother. And we look for our children. So when you hear this within your being, know that that little song was the song of giving light. Find our light, find our sisters, because we're not going to stop until we find them. Thank you.
Everybody's got to understand, we as men have to respect our women, period. They are the givers of life. Without them, we're nothing. Okay? Understand that. And any man raises his hand to a woman's not a man. I'm 6'5", 330 pounds. I have 4 black belts in martial arts. I'm a professional bodyguard. I've done security work for national acts, congressmen, you name it. I've never raised my hand to my mother. I've never raised my hand to the mother of my children or to any one woman that I've gone out with, because I am truly a man. There is no reason, as far as I'm concerned, for a man to act that way, period. I don't care what color, what race, what religion you are. It shouldn't happen, period. Shauna Harris, Pima Indian Youth. We're going to have her have a few words.
Hi, I'm Sean Hara. I am of the Gila River Indian Community in Arizona. I'm currently an enrolled student at Haskell Indian Nations University in Lawrence, Kansas. I've only spoken at a few events about subjects such as these, and I just feel very strongly about them and the importance that they serve to our communities. And I have to give total credit to my elder, who's now passed, Gali Sanchez, for kind of planting the seed in me and to carry his torch, I feel, to continue speaking and fighting on these subjects that mean so much to me and many of our other communities. But one of the first things we learn really young in school is in 1942, Columbus sailed the ocean blue, which, yes, as a matter of fact, he did. He is credited for the discovery of the Americas in spite of the fact that he actually wasn't the first. Not only was he not the first European to reach the Americas, he's like one of the last people to actually have reached the Americas. And not only was he one of the last ones to reach the Americas, he actually wasn't intentionally supposed to be here. He got completely lost on his voyage and ended up reaching the Americas unintentionally, and he just ended up claiming them for his own. So why exactly do we celebrate a man that not only wasn't supposed to be here, he never touched American soil, and he was actually not the first European to actually reach this continent or the Americas in general? Leif Erikson is actually a Norse explorer who was actually like over 900 years before Columbus was born, was one of the first Europeans to reach the American continent. Yet no one ever hears about him or is ever recognized for his discovery of the Americas. But not only discovery is such a horrible term for that, because how can you discover something where people and thousands, millions of nations, empires, tribes were already established here for over 15,000 years? So what exactly did Columbus do? Thought Company, an article by Ted Head, specifically states that Columbus was the first European to successfully conquer a piece of the Americas. He was the first European to monetize off the Americas, a man that with 3 ships brought the worst people that Spain had to offer, criminals, rapists, thieves, murderers, and brought them here to this continent to explore what he thought was the Indies. And he was the first to start the largest slave trade of stolen goods from the Americas to Europe in history. Just started this whole, honestly, led us to where we are today. The systematic racism that you see today is the reason that Columbus Day is still celebrated. Columbus Day is only celebrated because the people that argue for Columbus Day are people that just respect a man that took advantage of people over thousands of years, people who just had no chance against the man and the mass numbers that the Europeans were bringing over to this continent. But yet, They refuse to change Indigenous Peoples Day because they claim that we're trying to erase history, eradicate Columbus's good name, even though they're not even telling the true history of our people. In school, the textbooks share about, I'd say approximately 2 pages of American history textbooks are dedicated to Native Americans and the contributions we've given to this country. Only 2 pages of any American history book throughout schools all over the United States, approximately 2 pages, are dedicated. There's never been one war fought on American soil that Native Americans haven't been involved in, but yet we're not recognized for it. There hasn't been one political fight for civil rights movement that hasn't involved Native people, yet we receive absolutely no recognition for it. Why? Because those who win these fights are the ones who write history. But each and every day, Natives stand up against an overwhelming force that is telling us that we don't matter, the contributions that we've given to this country are irrelevant, and that all we're trying to do is erase history. When as a matter of fact, I wish we could erase history. I wish we could take back the mistakes that this country has caused and the pain this country has caused, the mass genocide this country has caused on people so undeserving of it, all because they believe that they were entitled to something that didn't belong to them. I wish I could take it back. I wish I had the power to do that, but sadly I can't. I wish I could erase it, but the least I can do is tell the truth of the history of this country, and the only way to remedy the mistakes of this country is to admit we have a problem in the first place, and that's all anyone has ever asked this administration, this government, the people that constantly are preaching these lies to us to do, is to admit that you've made mistakes, remedy your mistakes, and grow from your mistakes. And sadly, it's sad that we've had to go so many years fighting this battle of just asking the people in charge of this nation to tell us that they've made mistakes, to remedy their mistakes, and bring justice to people that are just so deserving of it. Police brutality still lives. Police are constantly, the Black community and Native communities are the most oppressed by the police in any statistical minority, and no one ever talks about it. We're fighting a civil rights movement right now in this country and constantly being demoralized for it, called rioters, anarchists, when in matter of fact, we're just fighting for rights. Nothing more, nothing less. Nothing we've been doing for hundreds of thousands of years was fighting for rights of people, human beings, and all that we've constantly been told is that we're less than. That's all people say to us. Anytime they say we're rioters, anarchists, what are you fighting for? There's no point to what you're doing. You have all you could ever ask for is complete ignorance, and you're totally blind to the problems of this continent if you believe that there aren't problems just because you're not suffering from them. That's all I really have to say. Thank you.
Thank you for your words. Just to hit upon a little bit what she was saying, in the Constitution of this country, we indigenous people are less than human. Let that sink in for a little while. Now I'm going to bring up Saman, I'm butchering her name, and again, I apologize for saying it wrong. A women of peace and justice in Iran.
Good afternoon, sisters and brothers in a struggle. We are here today honoring the indigenous peoples of this land. Last week, the state of Virginia joined DC proclaiming this day the Indigenous Peoples Day. This is another symbolic victory for the people. However, we know that this is not a day of celebration, and it's not a day of lamentations of the oppression of the indigenous peoples by the European colonialists of the past and today's imperialism of the world headed by US government, especially the US ruling class. Today should be a new beginning in uniting all the oppressed people of this land, the indigenous peoples, the African Americans, all people of color, and the poor and working people of all colors and ethnicities. In this land, however, the indigenous peoples are the ones who have struggled the longest and have been subjected to some of the harshest oppression by the original white settlers in this land, the injustice, political, social, cultural, that still goes on today. The settlers came with their ships and their guns. They brought blankets that were intentionally soaked in a smallpox virus. They plundered and massacred and brought mayhem to a mostly peaceful people who honored this earth. They came with their colonialist ideology, the practice of extreme exploitation of the land and the people. Andrew Jackson sent the Cherokees on the trail of tears. And today, we deserve the symbolic victory of wiping off his picture from the printed money and bringing down all of his statues. What we are really in need of in these perilous times of the rise of white supremacy and fascist ideology is to study the history of the revolutionary resistance, the organizations and the movement of the indigenous peoples of this land. We have to learn from the lessons of the victories and correct the mistakes. And we need to build a strong, disciplined organization based on revolutionary principles. This is the work of the young people of today. But it is important for the young people of today to throw off the yoke of individualism and the ideology of private property. While the ruling class promotes individualism and opposition to all forms of organizations of the oppressed people, from the unions to socialist and revolutionary parties, the ruling class themselves are organized in corporations, in their foundations with billions of dollars for propaganda. They're organized in their military, in their prisons, their security organizations, and their global financial organizations. The global ruling class has used their organizations in occupying the world, enslaving the workers, bringing misery and poverty to the people. They take away, usurp all the land and the water, and they bring total devastation to this earth. Nothing is more important in the struggle against the ruling class than the unity of the oppressed in disciplined organizations based on revolutionary principles ready for the long march to protect humanity and this beautiful earth from the ravages of global capitalism and imperialism. Long live the solidarity of the oppressed people of this world.
Thank you. Mr. Powers, come on. Introduce yourself.
Can I use this? Good afternoon, sisters, brothers, and siblings. My name is Andre Powell, and I'm here with a delegation from Baltimore, Maryland, of the People's Power Assembly and Struggle La Lucha newspaper. Late in the night of July 4th this summer, a group of Baltimore protesters tied ropes around the, pardon me, gotta take these off to read. I need them to see, but I can't read with them. A group of protesters tied ropes around the Christopher Columbus statue that stands in the Inner Harbor and pulled it down from its base, breaking it into two pieces. They then rolled the two pieces to the water's edge and dumped them into the dirty, murky water of the Inner Harbor. The demonstrators were among a number of groups who are calling for removal of monuments honoring white supremacists, owners of enslaved people, and perpetrators of racist genocide. Not only in Baltimore, but also in Minneapolis did statues of Christopher Columbus come down. Approximately 10 days ago, the Baltimore City Council voted to rename Columbus Day as Indigenous Peoples Day. Thus, Baltimore joins many other cities around the country in rightly removing any honor to this man who opened up the Western Hemisphere to the era that led to the slaughter of entire indigenous nations, whether in the U.S., Canada, or Central and South America. Over 5 centuries ago, what was begun as European white supremacist expansionist exploration to the New World in search of new trade has evolved into a legacy of one policy after another of the newly formed United States that involved both displacement and annihilation of native nations through the Monroe Doctrine and Manifest Destiny. In the present day, these policies are alive as ever. But the resistance of indigenous nations today is stronger and more determined than ever to defend their lands. Native land defenders and their allies from around the country boldly fought against the Dakota Access Pipeline Project to steal and destroy their land and water supply from mining companies. Today, at the California-Mexico border, the Kumeyaay Native Nation and allies gathered in Boulevard, California to halt the building of Donald Trump's border wall, which is nothing but a monument to white supremacy. The Army Corps of Engineers is blasting an existing wall, which is located on sacred burial sites at the Kumeyaay ancestors. Indigenous artifacts and bones have been found at the blasting site. This border wall divides their tribal lands. Native resistance is not just confined to the U.S. borders. Indigenous people and their many allies have taken to the streets throughout Canada in response to multiple raids on peaceful encampments in Wet'suwet'en territory in British Columbia. The camps are part of the effort to block the Coastal Gas Link Pipeline Company from entering their territory. This past February, coming in the middle of the night, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police with guns, dogs, and helicopters raided the land defenders' camps, arresting over 30 people. As word spread of the arrest of peaceful defenders, people across Canada and in other countries rose up and engaged in actions to intervene economically and politically so that Canada would take notice. Roads and bridges were blocked from the port of Vancouver to Halifax to Toronto and Quebec. In Ontario, defenders blocked train tracks to shut down rail lines. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police has a long, bloody history as an occupying army whose role for generations has been removing Indigenous people from their lands, suppressing Indigenous resistance, and breaking strikes and more. The murderous legacy of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police has done nothing to address the epidemic of missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit people in Canada. We must take note that there are no borders in the Indigenous struggle. We stand in solidarity with our Indigenous sisters, brothers, and siblings in those Central and South American countries whose right-wing governments have continuously murdered and attempted to suppress the legitimate voices of Indigenous sovereignty and self-determination. We call for the release of Leonard Peltier and many Indigenous heroes and sheroes who have been framed up and railroaded and remain languishing in the jails and prisons of this country. Their only crime is standing up to fight white supremacist policies targeting Indigenous communities. To hell with Columbus. Victory to all Indigenous nations all over the entire Western Hemisphere. Long live the fight for sovereignty and self-determination. Just as we demand reparations for the cruelty of slavery, we also demand reparations for the genocide, the stolen lands, and the thousands of broken treaties. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We have a Marquise Carney, Friends of the Congo. He'll be on just a minute. The gentleman mentioned the name Leonard Peltier. He is a political prisoner of this country. He was wrongfully convicted of the murder of 2 FBI agents. Since his conviction, all right, we got a person on the phone. Go ahead.
Okay. Peace, brothers and sisters. I hope everybody's doing well today. Thank you for providing Friends of the Congo the opportunity to share a few words of solidarity with the organizers and certainly with our Indigenous brothers and sisters. I'm with Friends of the Congo. Congo, as many of you know, is probably one of the most outstanding victims of a 500-year process that led not only to the enslavement of Africans, but also to the genocide against Indigenous peoples in the Americas. Process that's grounded in the doctrine of discovery. The papal bulls that came out in the mid to late 1400s that stated that any land that the so-called discoverers or explorers find, it belongs to the church. It belongs to the Europeans. If there are no Christians inhabiting that land, then that land and its resources belong to the Europeans. This doctrine of discovery, an often overlooked document, that often, when looked at, often leaves out the religious dimension of this policy that has obtained for the past 500 years. Not only did it trigger the genocide of the Indigenous peoples here in the Americas, but it also catapulted the trafficking of Africans from the continent to the Americas. And it is very much present today in trade policies that we see, whether we're talking about the World Trade Organizations or any of the other multilateral institutions and their dealings with indigenous people and people of the South. So as people of African ancestry, we have no other choice but to be in solidarity with our indigenous brothers and sisters. We have to demand justice for our indigenous brothers and sisters, reparations for people of African ancestry, and it's paramount that we continue to organize, to raise people's consciousness about the protracted 500-year onslaught on people of African ancestry and on the indigenous people. So the gathering today is critical in piquing the consciousness of our people and continuing the tradition of resistance against imperialism, resistance against capitalism, resistance against the exploitation of indigenous lands in the Americas, the exploitation of the African continent. So this event and this gathering is considered to be a part of that process of resistance that we must continue. And Friends of the Congo is honored to be a part of the solidarity work that's being done, to be a part of this effort to bring about justice for indigenous brothers and sisters, to rightfully stand by their sides as they continue this fight for their dignity and for respect. So we thank you for inviting us to be a part of the effort. Thank you, Brother Bob, Brother Lee. It seems like you were quite perceptive in changing the date, because today is a beautiful day for gathering, and we're very honored to be a part of the overall effort. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. I have with me now Mike Nephew of the American Indian Society.
Namaskar Gwego. I've said I'm thankful that you are all well. There's been a lot of good things said here today, and you should remember a lot of these things, and if you don't know about what they were talking about, you should research it. You know, I'm really proud of our young sister who's at Haskell, who gave a very good informative speech about who actually was the first European to come here. But you know, like as my mother said when I was in school, how can they claim to discover a place where people are already at? He came over here on the guise of going somewhere else, got back there, told him he'd been where he wasn't, and got credit for it. And then they gave him credit for discovering it, and he didn't even know he hadn't been over to the west, to India. It was America Vespucci who was the one who proposed that idea to most of Europe at that point in time. So he didn't even know that he wasn't in India. He thought this was part of India. It wasn't a discovery. He thought he was claiming it, and he thought he was claiming someplace else. There are a lot of issues still going on, not just in the U.S., not just in Canada, but also in South America. In the past couple of weeks, they have been attacking the indigenous fishermen in Nova Scotia. I just read that they burned down one of the processing houses for the lobsters that the indigenous people in Canada were using. They've had calls out to the Canadian government to do something about it, and the government has not stepped up. The non-indigenous fishermen are harassing them. They're cutting their lines to their lobster traps. They've lost hundreds of lobster traps because they cannot find them because the buoys have been cut from them. And these are what the non-indigenous population is doing when we try to exert our rights that have been guaranteed to us in treaties, our rights that we had before we even had those treaties. are rights that were given to us by our Creator. Those are the things that are being trampled on, even today. Claiming this as Indigenous Peoples Day is only just the start. It's not the whole thing. The whole thing is protecting our people. They talked about our murdered and missing women. And in a lot of places, it's hard to prosecute non-Indians if they do violence to Indians on the reservation. And it's because the federal government said, no, we'll take care of that, but they don't. And that's where the problem lies. Trump says that he created this panel for Indigenous women, but he never stood up and spoke for the Violence Against Women Act. That speaks louder than what he says. His lack of action speaks louder than what he says. His actions to defund and eliminate environmental protections says a lot more than what he says in his mouth. That is what we have to listen to. Not what he says, but what his actions are and the deeds that he has done or not done. What he steps up to do or what he backs away from doing. Those are the things that you need to look at when you look at all of your politicians. Nereska.
Thank you, Mike. We now have a gentleman that I know personally from AIM, Central Texas, American Indian Movement in Central Texas, David Ortiz. He's a good friend of mine, and he has some good words for us. Okay, David couldn't make it then. Let me finish what I was stating about Leonard Peltier real quick here. Leonard Peltier was wrongfully convicted of murdering 2 FBI agents. Later on, during the trial, they never showed the ballistics tests that were given on the bullet that killed those agents. It never came from his gun. He's still sitting in jail, 2 life terms. He served those life terms already, and he's still sitting in jail. The statement we got from the federal government is he will never leave for doing something he didn't do. Leonard Peltier needs to go home to his people and his family. Do we have David on? Okay, so hold on, please.
Okay. My name is Abiodun. Oyewole. I'm one of the founding members of the Last Poets, and we have been around for 50 years, and we're still going very strong. And my poem is entitled Reign of Terror, and I'm doing this because we're facing a lot of terror on a lot of levels besides the virus. We have a viral president who is like a human virus himself, and we also have social injustice going on, and money's not really doing very well right now, and black people have endured a lot. America's a terrorist, killing the natives of the land. Killing and stealing has always been America's master plan. To control the earth and everything on it, to divide and conquer is all they wanted. America's a terrorist, killing the buffalo that roam the plains. Killing and slaughtering animals was turned into a game, giving blankets contaminated with smallpox to the natives who were here, the beginning of germ warfare, the beginning of white fear. No respect for the land, the trees, or the air we breathe, and Christianity was an excuse to bring others to their knees. America's a terrorist where a slave system in place to take away the humanity of a darker race, put people in chains and beat them with whips, made them give up their names, those who survived the slave ships. America's a terrorist, chewing tobacco and eating swine, being mean and nasty to those who treated him kind. Take a pregnant black woman, cut her belly open, let the fetus fall out, stomp the baby in the ground till it still fears what that was all about. Gang up on a black man, hang him from a tree, cut him down and set him on fire for everyone to see. America's a terrorist with a howdy-doody grin and using the Bible to keep others in check while America commits all the sin. Thou shalt not kill. That's not part of the American dream because the kill is a thrill they love to show on your TV screen. Romance a gun just for fun. Drop a bomb just for charm. This is the American way. And all this talk about equality, justice, and peace, spewing out the mouths of these governmental beasts. Every time blacks tried to find a way to do for self, the American terrorist wasn't having it, and fear is all black folks felt. Rosewood was a town where blacks tried hard to thrive. White folks burned it down, and many blacks lost their lives. There was a town in Oklahoma called Black Wall Street. Blacks at homes banked lots of money and stood strong on their own 2 feet. But now you see the whites nearby were jealous and just couldn't stand seeing blacks do so well. So they dropped not 1 but 2 bombs on the town in 1921 and created a living hell. America's a terrorist, feeding off racism and greed, not caring, not sharing, but enjoying watching people bleed. Every time Jack Johnson fought and beat a white boy in the ring, white mobs would kill blacks at random because a black man was boxing's king. And all the wars we fought to try to win respect at home, but when the war was over, we were never treated like we belonged, but rather the subjects of experiments at Tuskegee and other places. For 400 years, blacks have lived in fears of the vicious cruelty of the racists, tried to march for justice and the civil right to be treated fair, attacked by dogs, fire hoses, beaten by police, forced to live a life in total despair. Bombed a church in Birmingham while the children were in Sunday school. Took the lives of 4 little girls. Yes, this terrorist is just that cruel. American terrorism is like a virus that's homegrown and spreads across the planet too, selling guns and chemical weapons gift wrapped in red, white, and blue. Soldier boys selling guns for hard drugs in exchange. It should be obvious by now that this country is deranged. And yet we stand and pledge allegiance to a flag that brings lots of grief, and singing that war song every day is America's only belief. America's a terrorist, and no one wants to admit, and pointing the finger at others is the ironic part of it. Dropped a bomb in Philadelphia to wipe out an organization called MOVE, killed unarmed women and children because the police had something to prove. And all the Black Panthers who were trying to help their community wiped out by the FBI for trying to create black unity, put drugs in the hood, set folks up for no good, kept unemployment high. Education is laced with lies, turned the people against each other, made money more sacred than your mother, caused an avalanche of grief by trigger-happy police, locked the black man up in jail, made him think he was born to fail, and no place are you safe if you have a darker face. Henry Dumas, Amadou, Malcolm Cooper, Yusuf Focus, Arnold Bumpus, Anthony Byers, Arthur Miller, James Byrd, Emmett Till, just to name a few, died at the hands of American terrorists. Although terrorism here ain't a damn thing new, and AIDS has become an epidemic all over the world where black people live, an evil virus created by mad scientists for people who only have love to give. The CIA, the KKK, the FBI, and the Michigan militia and the police from coast to coast are the real American terrorists, and the government is the host. So now America is ready to engage in World War III. Well, what goes around has come around, but you can't kill what you can't see. Thank you very much.
For your words. We now are going to have Wooten. Okay. And we're going to go in a few minutes on the phone here.
I am Mutu Moyusi. I am a political organizer for the All African Peoples Revolutionary Party, GC. We would like to thank our indigenous brothers and sisters for inviting us to this commemoration so that way we may express our unity and solidarity with the indigenous peoples and nations of the Western Hemisphere. The All African Peoples Revolutionary Party, GC, is honored to be at Malcolm X Park and with our listeners at this special period in history with our people, friends, and allies for this monumentous commemoration of indigenous peoples. African people's solidarity with the indigenous peoples and nations of the Western Hemisphere is one in principle. Kwame Nkrumah addressed this issue as Africa confronted the same problem the indigenous peoples and nations face in the Western Hemisphere with settlers. Settler colonialism is an international and Pan-African problem, the base of U.S.-led imperialism worldwide. Kwame Nkrumah addressed the problem of Africa, he asserted the problem of Africa, looked at as a whole, is a wide and diversified one. But its true solution lies in the application of one principle, namely the right of a people to rule themselves. No compromise can affect this cardinal and fundamental principle, and the idea that when a handful of settlers acquire a living space on our continent, the indigenes must lose this right, and is not only a serious travesty of justice, but is also a woeful contradiction of the very dictates of history. The A-APRP-GC states indisputably, there can be no political integrity or peace in the Western Hemisphere without the objective resolution of the land question and the emancipation of all indigenous peoples and nations. History has recorded that the founding of the United States of America and other countries in the Western Hemisphere were born out of land theft and genocide committed against the indigenous peoples and nations in North, Central, and South America and the Caribbean. European military and armed settlers were primary implements of genocide used by the U.S. and other European governments for the colonization of the Western Hemisphere. The founding fathers, in establishing the United States of America, created a racist and murderous apartheid state. It was the USA that became and is the international imperialist model for the establishment and institutionalization of settler colonial racist apartheid states worldwide. These barbaric crimes against our indigenous brothers and sisters in the Western Hemisphere demand condemnation and protest. More importantly, the All African Peoples Revolutionary Party, GC, is participating in this commemoration in solidarity and to memorialize and pay homage to the courageous Apache, Arawak, Aymara, Aztec, Caribs, Cherokee, Cheyenne, Chippewa, Choctaw, Cortega, Eskimo, Inca, Iroquois, Lakota Sioux Maya, Miscuta, Navajo, Nez Perce, Omak, Panan, Piscataway, Seminole, Tiano, and other indigenous peoples and nations in the Western Hemisphere for their valiant and heroic fight against settler colonialism in defense of their cultural integrity, their dignity as peoples, and the theft of their blood-drenched land. History has recorded that Africa's trade, cultural exchange, and political relationship with the indigenous peoples and nations of the Western Hemisphere predates Columbus. Africa's first contact with the indigenous peoples and nations of the Western Hemisphere did not come through Europe, but directly from Africa. But with settler colonial oppression and exploitation, the nature of African and indigenous peoples' relationship qualitatively changed. Resistance, rebellion, and revolution brought a new character to this relationship. Mutual respect and solidarity in the struggle for liberty and dignity became and is its foundation. The AAPRP-GC continues, inherits, and advances this tradition laid before us by our progressive and revolutionary ancestors and the relations established with our indigenous sisters and brothers forged in the crucible of anti-colonial and anti-racist struggles. It was into the arms of our indigenous sisters and brothers that Africans were embraced when fleeing the dehumanizing plantations of slavery. It was in rebellious solidarity that Africans throughout the Western Hemisphere joined in arms with their indigenous brothers and sisters to fight a common enemy. It was the blessing of our indigenous sisters and brothers that Africans established liberated territories like those of the Maroons. We know this history well, and therefore the AAPRP-GC, our love, solidarity, and support for the struggle of our indigenous sisters and brothers is both unquestioned and unbreakable. The AAPRP-GC is forever grateful to our indigenous peoples and nations for their hosting and allowing Africans to sojourn in their homeland. We know that the only homeland that can truly be claimed by an African, no matter where in the world we live, is Africa. Africans' gratitude can only be expressed through our conscious and active solidarity in our common struggle against U.S.-led capitalism and imperialism. We are asking all Africans to join the AAPRP-GC so that you can help us increase our capacity to contribute to the fight to emancipate the indigenous peoples and nations of the Western Hemisphere, but also to all peoples and nations who are victims of settler colonialism. Victory to the revolutionary struggle for Pan-Africanism, ready for revolution. The victory is for us. The All African People's Revolutionary Party, GC. We thank you.
Thank you for your words, sir. I have a young lady here that's going to speak upon Leonard Peltier and his situation. Introduce yourself.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. My name is T. Carter, and I am one of Leonard Peltier's paralegals. I come to you today to say, free Peltier! Free Peltier! I want you to know, we want to let you know that we need you to help today, because Leonard needs to know we have not forgotten him. You know, the roots of this go way back to Columbus, from the way Columbus treated the Arawaks. In one day's time, Christopher Columbus and his men killed 3,000 people. They poured hot lye soap down them. They just used them as target practice. They took babies by the feet and slammed them against trees and fed them to the dogs. 3,000 indigenous people. So this has been going on for generations and generations and passed down to the way people have treated Leonard Peltier. Leonard Peltier did not kill those 2 FBI agents that day. Someone else did. They were killed at point blank. Leonard Peltier was 150 feet away. Even some of the prosecutors said it couldn't have been Leonard that shot those agents. So Leonard has been in prison for decades and decades and decades, and now he is an elder, and we need to let him know we still care about him. Now, Leonard is in Coleman, Florida, and his people live very far away up in North Dakota. He can only have visitors there that have known him since before the crime, so very few people can get in. He would like to hear from you. I'm going to give you his address today so you can write him a letter. But before you write, please listen carefully because there's a lot of new regulations. Leonard Peltier, P-E-L-T-I-E-R, number 89637-132. Once again, 89637-132. USP Coleman 1, P.O. Box 1033, Coleman, Florida 33521. Please use a regular business envelope in white. Only use a stamp that you get put on at the post office. Do not use any return address or labels. Write the entire thing out. Do not send him a card. Do not send colored envelopes. Colored paper. They can only have white paper now and white envelopes and no cardstock. If you care to send them a photo of yourself or anything else that you find desirous, it can only be a 4x6 and no Polaroids are allowed. I strongly suggest you write to him and follow these guidelines very carefully or the letter will be sent back. He would really love to hear from you. So let's hear it again, everybody. Free Peltier!
Thank you for those words. We have Sister Empire Phil Colon from the Million Women's March. Sorry for butchering your name.
All right. Greetings to everyone. My name is Sister Empress Philae Chionesu, and I am the founder of the original Million Woman March, which of course will be commemorating 23 straight years of unapologetic Black independent struggle for real liberation and justice. It is such a pleasure and an honor to be here with you today. I wish I could have been there in person. Unfortunately, I had another conference obligation to do. But again, I want to send our love and respect to our family, to our allies, and have everyone to know that we stand firmly with our Native peoples. We stand firmly with all who strive for real justice and liberation. And note, there is only two peoples in this land, known as North America, that have a very specific type of grievance, a very specific type of right. And that is, of course, to charge this government with genocide, which is what, as MWM now proceeds in raising up the first global movement for women and girls of African descent, we are making that claim, we're making that declaration very, very clear. Again, we are a family, particularly when it comes to the atrocities that have been inflicted upon us. Those who were already here, those who were kidnapped and brought here. None other has this happened to in modern times of history over these past 400 plus years. We are the ones, and we are also the ones we've been waiting for, because we are the ones that's going to put an end to it, not only now, but forever. This government must now not only be exposed worldwide thoroughly, it must also be stopped. It must also not ever be allowed to do this type of thing again. And as a Black woman born in this land, I dare say that I am, in fact, a Black African American, not African American. Let me rephrase that. Black African North American, because we claim land, we claim to this land, to this mass known as North America, not the government, you see. And so in this day and age, we're getting ready to bring that position forward as well, that our relationship, that our commitment is connected to the land called North America. And so for those who are now ready to move forward and understand, when you hear that phrase, we say we're African North American, they're going to know who we're talking about. Again, for there to be an observance continuously of indigenous peoples, again, we stand with you firm. We stand with you strong. We stand with you united as our brothers and sisters from the A-APRP-GC has stood with us and other groups of nations. We stand with you all today and forever. May the Creator, whatever name you call him, her, it, continue to bless and guide you. And we are always looking for our ancestors to continue to stand with us, guide us, and always lead us now to real sustainable victory. Ashe, ashe, Ashe. Much love and respect to you all.
Thank you for your words. We now have Venerable. No? All right. Bob Brown. Where's Bob? Hello, Bob. Okay. While they're getting Bob. Yeah, we have some bottled water over here if anybody wants anything. We have some small snacks for anybody. We also have a phone that was found here on the property. So if people want to come up and claim the phone, by all means, go ahead. Indigenous Peoples Day. There's a lot of things that we do in the community. And because of COVID, we haven't had our powwows this year. Hopefully next year we'll be able to have some. And I want to invite everybody here out. Just look us up on the internet. Here comes Bob now. So, but Dave. Hold on a minute. All right, we have on the phone Pan Africa. All right, we're good.
All right, on the move. Hello? Yes. Oh, okay. I'm in solidarity, with the fight for indigenous rights, and solidarity. I'm at another event, so I'm trying to move around to find a quiet place. But solidarity means to me, it's not just a word, it's an activity. And when we're talking about that we care about, that we want to do something about, that making changes in what's happening with indigenous people, we got to understand that, again, this is an activity. It's activity, is, being active and confronting and government and about the horrible things that are happening right now to our indigenous brothers and sisters, disappearing of hundreds, well, I would go as far right now as to say thousands of indigenous women. What's going on the reservations and in the communities that indigenous people live in with COVID. And so what I'm saying is I'm in solidarity with this and the fight, and who's ever out there, my number is 267 760-7344. And I'm in the fight, and as many places as I can be, the MOVE organization could be. And our respect for indigenous people goes all the way back. This is indigenous people land that we are actually, standing on. When we were in a confrontation with the government and they was trying to force us to move from our home, we let them know very clearly, until you bring us somebody from an indigenous tribe, an indigenous organization, in order to sit down at this table with you, and you can't tell us nothing about moving anywhere. And so that's the respect that we have. And I'm talking about we was in an armed confrontation, and they wanted to talk with us, and not without indigenous people right there at this table. This is who we respect. In fact, we told them we didn't need to talk with them at all. So, when you're in solidarity with, and this is the land of indigenous people, and we must act that way.
Thank you for your words. Now we have Bob Brown coming up from the Pan-African Roots and All African Peoples Revolution.
We want to thank you for coming out here today. We especially want to thank Chief Billy Tyak and the Piscataway Indian Nation in Tyak Territory and the American Indian Movement in this region, the Mid-Atlantic region, and throughout the United States and indigenous people throughout the hemisphere. There are basically two topics we could have spoke about today. Because of time, we will only do one. To give you a kind of an introduction to the beginning one, God made no slaves in the womb. God made no slaves in the womb, which was an 1845 abolitionist slogan, where the abolitionist movement was moving for one of the last major wars to help abolish slavery. God made no slaves in the womb. How could a pope enslave us? How could a conquistador, a banderanti, a pilgrim enslave us? Not just Columbus, but Prince Henry the Navigator, Francis Drake. For more than 25 years, the various Presbyterian organizations in North America and in Scandinavia have sent delegations after delegations of indigenous people from the Western Hemisphere, including Chief Oil Lions and some of the Onondaga nations, to go to Rome to demand that the Pope repudiate and repeal the papal bulls of discovery, the papal bulls of demarcation, the papal bulls of colonialism and conversion. That struggle is intensifying. The struggle to eliminate and to remove the Columbus statues in every corner of the world. There is even a Columbus statue in Cairo, Egypt, a Columbus statue in Tokyo, Japan. Those statues must come down, But not just Columbus's statue. All racist political statues in every corner of the world must and will come down. We're writing a book about this. We're behind. We're struggling with it. We're trying to move forward. But let me quickly talk about the other topic. This represents, this event represents an event within a more than 60-year continuum. We inherit, we continue the revolutionary tradition and practice of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. What is not known, between 1962 and 1968, there were at least 2 indigenous people. Buffy St. Marie, one of the biggest indigenous entertainers and folk singers in the history, and a man named Hunter Bear, whose family goes back to the Haymarket struggles and whatnot. But also two Chicano women, Maria Varelia, and a woman named Elizabeth Kiki Martinez. This is a 60-year history that we are continuing. People do not know our history, That is one indication of it. If we take just the year 1967 and 1968 as an example, in January of 1967, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee said Kwame Ture, Stokely Carmichael to San Juan, Puerto Rico, and SNCC signed a treaty with Juan Marie Bras and the Movement for the Independence of Puerto Rico and the Federation of University Students. When they came back into the United States, the SNCC office in New York City and the MPI office in New York City began a 2-year process which culminated in the emergence of the Young Lord organization. Obi Adun, he is on this program deliberately because Obi Adun, as one of the original last poets, worked with a man named Felipe Luisiano, who founded the Young Lords of New York City. Fred Hampton Jr., I founded the Black Panther Party in Chicago. I put Fred Hampton in the position, and if he'd have listened to me, he would be alive tonight. I put Bob Rush in it, and if he'd have listened to me, he would not be a congressman tonight. When Stokely Carmichael came back to the United States, I became, through an accident of history, at 19 years old, the Midwest director of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee office in Chicago. And one of my first assignments was to go to the north side of Chicago and meet a man named Obed Lopez with the Latin American Defense Organization. The Young Lords Gang was the youth wing under that one. They transformed themselves into the Young Lords Party. We have a history. We have a history of working with Chicano Latino forces. In October of 1967, El Tigre, Reyes Lopez Tijerina, and the Mexican land grant movement, and Thomas Binyaka of the Hopi Nation convened a conference in Albuquerque, New Mexico. They invited the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee to attend that conference. Featherstone, Ethel Minor, Mikasa Ricks, who were called in, Freddie Green Biddle, and Maria Vavelia. These are SNCC people who went to that conference. And of that 4 or 5 people, 3 or 4 of them became the first Central Committee of the AAPRP. Maulana Rangaringa, representing the US organization, was there. They signed a treaty between the African and Indigenous and Hispanic and Latino movements in 1967, which continues to exist today. This is a history, a more than 60-year history of struggling to build progressive and revolutionary relationships with Indigenous and Hispanic and Latino forces. We are extremely proud, extremely happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We now have Michaela Ricks, former SNCC Field Security.
Well, thank you very much. Willie Ricks of SNCC and Mukasa Dada, the All-African People Revolutionary Party, and many other parties we work with. I was in SNCC 1967, 68. We were called to Albuquerque, Mexico, to unite with Tijerina's forces, who had a guerrilla group out there, and they was trying to take Mexico back, take New Mexico back, and they took a lot of territory, and the United States government, FBI and all of them went out there to take the land back, and they took Tijerina's mama and took her up in an airplane and announced on the air that if they didn't turn themselves in, if they didn't stop fighting, they were going to throw his mother out of the airplane. But Tijerina knows we signed an agreement that we were all family, brothers and sisters, comrades, and we were fighting the same struggle, fighting the same enemy, and we were joined together. And one of the most important things we do is ask our young people not to fight among themselves, but to fight together. And at that point, we took Tijerina and we introduced him to all the nationalists and Black Power movements throughout the South. We linked him up with Dr. King. I introduced him. Dr. King put their hands in each other's hands. Dr. King and Tijerina marched, demonstrated, and protested, and was part of all of Dr. King's movements all the way up until the time he died. So we recognize that the native people of this land, we had ideological and other kind of relationships hundreds or even thousands of years ago. And then when we were brought here as oppressed slave people, many of us escaped to the Indian reservations, and they fought to the death to protect us from our white racist slave masters. And we married them, they loved us and treated us as one. And that's why many African people and people of African descent here, they swear that they Indians or Native Americans or whatever, because the relationship has been so good and so loving that we even declare ourselves as Native people or Indians now. So we join in with that struggle, and we have always went around and preached to all the Chicano people and Mexicano, whatever they call themselves, that we need unity and we're one. We need black power, brown power, red power together. And so we are one, and we are fighting imperialism, we're fighting racism, we're fighting against the United States that continue to make crimes against not just people in the United States, but the Caribbeans and Brazil and South and Central America and all the land that the red people possess, all the land that African peoples possess. We are being attacked every day in the South Pacific and all over the world. The United States is still carrying out its imperialist, racist, colonial policies around the world. Even as we talk now, they're committing genocide on women. They're sterilizing women, babies, children, and they're trying to stop our people from being born. So we have to come together and prepare to fight, and we have to have a philosophy that we will fight them until we defeat them, and that we cannot stop fighting, and we fighting for our land. We need organizers, and we need people ready to go out and organize our people, teach them to love each other, work together, fight together, create institutions that will tell them the truth and give them the true culture and history of African people, the red people, and whoever we are, that build a worldwide army and run the enemies off our territory, run these multinational countries off our territory, run imperialism off our territory, and fight for the liberation of Africa and fight for the liberation of all our people. So I'm saying that we need unity, we need love, we need brotherhood, and we are one. And we must make it clear we will fight the enemies who have invaded our land, who continue to build armies on our land and oppress our people and kill our people, and even use our people to kill us and murder us, neo-colonialism all over the world. We want the African people and the revolutionaries and the native people and the Chicana people know that we will fight imperialism until it's dead. We will fight them until they are dead. We need revolution. Thank you, Africans. Thank you, my people. Black power.
Thank you for your words. We have Mulan Kiger on the line now.
Habari gani? This is Dr. Maulana Karenga. I'm chair of the organization US and the National Association of Kawaida Organizations. On behalf of our organization US and its members, we send you warm greetings of deep solidarity and continuing struggle. But we know that in the context of a pathology of white supremacy and racist oppression, there is no effective remedy except resistance. No strategy worthy of its name that does not stress and foreground struggle. And there's no way forward except to cross the blood-stained battlefield for a new world and a new way forward for humankind. We join all the life-respecting, dignity-affirming, and freedom-loving peoples in the world in standing in active solidarity with the Native American and Indigenous people in their efforts to eliminate Columbus Day and establish Indigenous Peoples Day as an ongoing act of remembrance, reaffirmation, and resistance. And we take up the cause of struggle, declaring no celebration of genocide, honor the lives, histories, and cultures of the Indigenous people and all our people, and engage in righteous and relentless struggle until there is one, and there is a radical reconception and reconstruction of this society. We stand in solidarity with Indigenous people because, first, their cause is a just and right one. And we affirm, as always, that the U.S. will never be a just and good society until it comes to terms with the rightful claims of Native American people in this country. We stand in solidarity also with the Indigenous people because we share a long history with them as allies in struggle, family members, co-builders of society, and fellow seekers and soldiers for a new, just, good, and sustainable world. Indeed, Native Americans were our first allies, giving us asylum and opening up their ranks of resistance to us so that we could struggle also against the colonial monster that was moving forward across the land. We also build with other ethnic groups and nations, and we built with them the Seminole Nation. And we went with the Native Americans to Mexico, too. And there were given free land to build a border defense against Yankee encroachment and imperial invasion. And so we have good relationship throughout history with Native American people. In the 60s, our organization, us, SNCC, and the Black Congress and other black organizations went to sign a treaty of peace, harmony, and mutual assistance with black, brown, and red people, with Race Tijerina of the Alianza Federal de Pueblos Libres, with Thomas Banyaka, prophetic messenger of the Hopi Nation, and others. For we knew then as now that in unity there is an increased strength for struggle and for building the good world we all want and deserve to live in. And finally, we stand in solidarity with our indigenous brothers and sisters because we share a common overall struggle for freedom and justice, for self-determination, for a good and meaningful and flourishing life for our people, and for a world in which environmental degradation no longer exists. A world in which the water runs clear, the air breathes clear. The water runs clean, the air breathes clear, and the soil is rich and unruined, and there is abundance in the land for everyone. Today, we of us reaffirm our commitment to unity and struggle, operational unity, unity and diversity, and unity for common good. And we call on all oppressed and struggling and progressive people to continue the struggle. Keep the faith, hold the line, love our people and each other, seek and speak truth, do and demand justice, be constantly concerned with the well-being of the world and all in it, and dare help rebuild an overarching and inclusive movement that prefigures and makes possible the good world we all want and deserve to live in. For indeed, this is our duty, to know our past and honor it, to engage our present and improve it, and to imagine a whole new world and to forge it in the most ethical, effective, and expansive ways. Hotep, Ashe, Hedi.
Thank you for your words. Akbar Muhammad is going to be on the phone next.
2009.
Thank you. They're trying his number again. Hold on. All right, here we go. Akbar Muhammad.
Yes, greetings. My name is Akbar Muhammad, International Representative of the Nation of Islam and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. I bring warm greetings from Minister Farrakhan on your Indigenous Peoples Day celebration. We thank the AAPRP, who always keeps us informed and in the mix and champion the struggle of the indigenous people. We would like to say that in this great hour of struggle, we must pass the legacy of this struggle on. We must not let it die. We must not let it wither. Yesterday, we celebrated the 25th year of the anniversary of the historical Million Man March. The Native Americans, the indigenous people of this land, joined us from every corner of America and outside of America. We must support the land back movement. We must get our land back. We must support those who are struggling against the Northwest Pipeline. We must support the nation in Canada of our people. We must not let the enemies of our struggle as a people divide us. We must help liberate our brothers and sisters in the prisons and the jails across America. We must, in the hour of uncertainty and this plague that has hit America, we must help our people. We notice that the struggle in Indian territory across America, and we have to ask why, and we must support them in this struggle. I thank you for these few minutes to talk and represent the Nation of Islam, and we are with you in this continued struggle. Thank you very much.
Thank you for those words. I was at the Million Man March. I helped the elders of my people to the stage so they could speak. Understand the solidarity between us, indigenous people, and the African people. I have behind me now the Uptown Boys. We're going to do a closing song. I want to thank everybody here for speaking today. I want to thank everybody here who showed up to listen to us speak today. I want to thank the sound crew. I want to thank everybody that helped provide the food, the first aid, Bob for all his help, John. I thank myself for being here, my son Guadalupe for helping us keep an eye on everybody and everything that's going on. And it's an honor to do this. And it'll be an honor to do it again next year. Uptown Boys. We're going to do one more song. One more, sorry.
Okay, good. Yeah, go ahead. Talk real quick.
Hello, again, we are the Uptown Boys and Lady, and we just want to wish everybody a well and healthy journey as we all separate from this spot today where we came together as a people, as a community, to celebrate and think about and honor Indigenous Peoples Day. Woohoo! Woohoo! Thank you all for being here. We want to give this one more intertribal song because we are all intertribal people, and we want to show our gratitude for the organizers, for the elders, for the people who put thought and preparation into this process to make today happen. So this honor song is for you. Aho, Wibnaha.
We want to make this part of your song as well, just like Mary said. And while you're sitting there listening, while you're listening to this song, we want you to close your eyes and we want you to think about what it took you to be here as a person, as an individual, as a person of conscience. And we also want you to pray for and think about the people that came before you so that we can remember them and bring their spirit and their goodwill here with us today as well. Hoka.
Yeah.
Thank you for those songs. She brought up something that I'm going to mention right here, solidarity. Think about this. We as people of color outnumber the ruling class of this country 10 to 1. Imagine what we could do if we stopped the infighting amongst ourselves, come together as one tribe, one nation, and overthrow this so-called government. And we have the Malcolm X drummers to finish out our day. Thank you, Aho, and I give thanks to the Creator for such a beautiful day. Aho.
Yo!